My name is Christopher Alley, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Media Studies at the University of Virginia, and author of the new book, Farm Fresh Broadband, The Politics of Rural Connectivity. One of the things the COVID-19 pandemic did is force us all online. Millions of people in rural America didn't have that option. Farm Fresh Broadband is kind of about two stories. One is the failure of federal policy to get broadband into rural communities. Sometimes that means just getting the infrastructure in the ground. Other times that means updating the infrastructure, which all of this takes a tremendous amount of money. And the money is being spent, but I argue it's not being spent democratically or efficiently. The other part of the book is about rural, local success stories, communities who have taken it upon themselves to find the partnerships, to fund the projects, to connect themselves in kind of the absence of both the private market and the support of federal policy. These rural communities understand the value of broadband. They understand the value of technology. They understand the value of connectivity, and they are frustrated when they don't have it. So they're looking to their local, state, federal representatives to make it easier on them. And chapter 4 of the book is dedicated to one particular county, Rock County in southwest Minnesota. And it was great to be able to sit down with the county administrator and the board of supervisors and do a lot of interviews and learn their story on how they made Rock County one of the most connected counties in Minnesota. And then something else happened after the fieldwork that made this whole thing pretty amazing, which is that I published a piece in the New York Times, and suddenly people started reaching out to me wanting to share their stories. I followed up with folks in Washington State, in Maine, in Kentucky, my home state of Virginia. It was great to see that there are so many communities out there that are taking it upon themselves to connect themselves. I took my hound dog with me, Tuna, and Tuna became the most amazing research assistant because people are hesitant to talk to a random stranger who walks up to them on the street, it turns out, but they are never hesitant to pet your dog. So Tuna and I would be walking down the street and someone would come up and want to pet Tuna. He's a very handsome dog. And then I'd be able to talk to them about broadband and talk to them about their internet and how they use their cell phone. And then suddenly they say, hey, you know what, my best friend has a farm and he's really struggling to get internet. Do you want to talk to him? I think the future of rural broadband research and rural tech research more generally is really bright. But I also think that it always needs to be focused around people. I think sometimes we get lost in the weeds when we talk about just for instance, policy or technology or political economy, right? I write in the book that broadband is actually not about technology, not about policy, not about companies. It's about people. And it's fundamentally about how people use broadband, use these tools and technologies of modernity to their advantage. And I think what's really cool about this moment now is with all this money coming down the pipelines from federal infrastructure grants and state programs, we're actually going to have an opportunity to document as scholars, as researchers, as technological enthusiasts, how broadband is being deployed. So I think we might see a lot more kind of ethnographies of deployment, ethnographies of infrastructure, which I think is really cool. And then to do studies on adoption, because we can actually in real time be with a community who's getting broadband for the first time or who's seeing their infrastructures finally be improved to the point where they can make active use of the internet. One of the things that policy scholars can do better is to figure out how policy is actually lived on the ground, and that for me was really revealing in my fieldwork. So much so that I started reading a lot more about how other fields who dealt with institutions dealt with how these institutions exist on the ground. And one area that drew me to was the area of religion and theology. And there's a field of study known as lived religion. And what that basically means is trying to figure out how is religion practiced in daily life. This isn't about going to church or mosque or synagogue, but really just reflected in everyday practices. What I did is translate that into policy work, and I called it lived policy. And by this I meant that I think it's part of the job of the policy scholar, and especially the critical policy scholar, to figure out how the policies that are designed and reified in Washington, D.C. are lived and experienced or not experienced throughout the country. So I was able to kind of take this new methodological approach, or at least this newly coined methodological approach, and bring it to communities throughout rural America.